I always think it's important for organisations to choose the interventions that they're going to do based on an overall appreciation of where their organisation's at. So in an ideal world, absolutely, organisations would be looking from the top down, from the leadership level, strategically, right through to everything that's composed within HR, all of our learning and development interventions. Everyone in the organisation would be equipped with an understanding of how they work and how they can work with the organisation in the best way possible. But is that always the case from the outset? No. Some organisations are going through times of real change and they need things that are going to support the building of resilience and that transition time from wherever the organisation's at to where it needs to get to within a specific time frame. So there are interventions that you can choose to utilise that are specifically focused on building resilience and getting through times of change. For other organisations, they're in a real growth phase and they're looking at how can we support our people to grow and develop in a more individual way. We know how the brain works a little more from a learning perspective, and we want to really support that and bring out the best in people and facilitate them learning in a way that is natural to them and will enable them to perform at their best and feel great about the job that they're doing. For other organisations, they're ready to really equip their leaders with an understanding of how to organise the organisation and lead from a place of engaging people rather than managing people or any other type of approach. So there really is quite a long piece of string that people and organisations can start from the place that's most appropriate to them. So the basic premise of the book came about through looking at the scientific literature. So that's normally how I start books. I have been reading a lot of scientific papers and I'm looking for themes. I'm looking for how can we bridge this information to organisations that can use it. And when I was doing that, some of the themes that were coming up were connecting with the word engagement to me. And I was approaching it from a brain perspective. So when we say engagement, I'm talking about engaged brains rather than maybe the more traditional use of the word engagement within organisations. There's overlaps for sure, but certainly when I'm talking about engagement, I'm thinking about engaged brains. So when we're thinking about engaged brains, what I was noticing from the literature was that that seemed to be the key thing. So a whole offshoot of positive effects stemmed from having brains engaged within organisations. And this was in stark contrast to approaches such as motivating people or managing people. Now, that's not to say that neither of those concepts isn't important within organisations. I think they are important, but I think that they're grossly overweighted in most organisations. So I think the focus needs to shift to focusing on how do we engage brains within an organisation. And if the focus is on engaging brains and then perhaps some of the motivation and then perhaps some of the management, and the management opportunities are very different from how we've seen them in the past, with increasing understanding coupled with some behavioural science with the neuroscience really strengthens what we can do in the field of management. But this turning it on its head, the traditional approach, and looking first at how we can engage brains, really from a neuroscience perspective is likely to gain so many better results for an organisation because of how people work. And when we look at some of the organisations that are naturally doing really well, what do we see? Engaged brains. So I love it when we can approach it from all angles, so we can see from the neuroscience side what we would expect from a behavioural perspective with individuals, and then we can look at examples in organisations and see where their focus is and see what activities they're doing, and then we can tally that up with the neuroscience to say, fantastic, engaged brains are leading to more productive organisations.